Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating a completely custom campaign in real time. I'm RJ Kerr, your host, and today we are going to be picking up with the side quest that we've been working on. Working title Monster Hunt. We'll need a better title than that eventually, but piecing that one together. That being said, if you aren't caught up on the stream or this is the first time you're watching, let me go ahead and give you a quick overview of what we've done so far so that you're not lost. Like I said, we are creating our very own domain of dread, or I'm saying we're creating our own custom campaign complete with its very own domain of dread. And to do that, we've decided on using a story circle structure. Now, the idea here is not to create a rigid plot, but rather to give us a little bit of structure when we're creating this campaign so that it has some of the appropriate rises and falls and the pieces and parts that we need to make it feel like a complete narrative, something from which to deviate, essentially. So we've already done a lot in terms of filling that out. We have figured out how our characters enter into this domain of dread through a portal that opens up on the blood moon. We have decided, well, we've talked about what kinds of motivations would draw them through this portal, what would thrust these characters through this and what would make them decide to do it. We have figured out where they would land, and so that's in a shanty town called Darkport, which sits on the edge of an inland sea. And we figured out that this inland sea is a big part of this domain of dread. That it was once the basin of a thriving metropolis, now fallen into ruin and flooded. And we've also decided that this domain has a dread lord that we're calling Evander, who is an elemental villain of some kind. And we're still piecing out exactly how he will influence the characters throughout the campaign and how he'll inevitably come into play. We finished up the very first adventure that the characters will encounter where they are kidnapped and briefly enslaved and have to escape their captors, and in doing so, learn of the existence of a long lost artifact that gives the wielder some sort of power over this domain of dread. And they would come to realize that this artifact is their best opportunity for escape. And so now we're working on a part of the campaign where the characters get proactive. They start looking for this artifact. They've got some clues to work with. They've got equipment, and they're no longer in the clutches of an evil cult. And so we're using a node structure style for this, where effectively what we're doing is we are creating, when the structure is called nodes, but I prefer to call investigative scenes because they are moments in the story where the characters have, or moments in the campaign where the characters have the opportunity to find more clues. With each clue leading to a new node or investigative scene. And these investigative scenes can be simple, like a simple social encounter. They can be more complicated than that. They can be complex social encounters. They can be little mini dungeons. They can be full blown adventures. And we're developing a range of those as we go, so that we've got a lot of variation. We have figured out a short 5 room dungeon for this. We've completed on that. We've done a heist style adventure in the Sahuagin stronghold. We have built out a complex social encounter with an oracle like siren, who is just a predatory, somewhat evil individual, but laid some track for her to come up again and again and be a reoccurring NPC. And now we've just finished a simple social encounter where the characters meet talk to one NPC and get some information from him. And we've also decided that he's a little bit of a quest giver himself, that he has his own obsessions, that he can send these characters on a side quest that will help the people of this domain of dread, uh, and additionally maybe earn them some rewards that will help them out along their way. So with that, we're going to keep working on the side quest we're building here. So I will go ahead and share my screen. But before I do that, just a reminder, this is an interactive stream. So as you have thoughts, ideas, opinions, questions, concerns, or anything else that you want to talk about in the chat, jump on in there. Love to hear from you. You guys come up with some amazing stuff as we go through this. So creative. Love hearing from you. All right, so sharing my screen here. Like I said, we just built out this simple social encounter to start, where we created an elderly monster hunter named Elias Bracken, who um, is obsessed with the destruction of a monster that he failed to hunt long ago. An obsession that has driven him to the edge of madness, partly because nobody else believes the monster exists. Be for the simple reason that unless you have a physical piece of this monster in your possession, you lose all memory of it the moment it leaves your sight. Um, this so Elias happens to have a claw from this creature, and so he's the only one who's really aware of it. And he wants the players, he wants the characters to go out and hunt it down for him, or even help him out to hunt it down, help him to hunt it down. So now we're working on that quest here, and we're balancing it for, or that side quest here, we're balancing it for 4 third level characters, although it could really fall anywhere in this campaign. Being a side quest, the characters can choose to engage with it in the beginning or not. We've started out by kind of imagining what this monster would be, and we came up with kind of a cool idea. I should say you guys came up with a very cool idea. The monster is actually a series of clones. It's not a single monster, but it's a succession of them that each gain new abilities when the new clone is activated, making them progressively harder to defeat, and perhaps perplexing the characters as to why something that they killed is back again. Um, we thought about kind of what form that would take, and we came up with sort of a river monster kind of creature with a crustacean insectoid body, moves on many legs, has a lobster-like tail and 4 legs that are like scything talons. It's a nocturnal creature, its base, and now we're working on the effectively the pieces and parts of this hunt. And we're using a very loose structure for this. We're simply following our Freitag's pyramid here, where we got a little. The exposition is when Elias is telling you about it. Now we're focusing on the rising action, giving that 3 different parts, leading up to the climax, and then covering the falling action and the resolution in the conclusion here. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dig back into this. We've got a couple parts here. We've got tracking the beast, the obvious beginning to this, because your players are going to assume that they need to go track this monster down, right? That's the logical thing for them to do if they accept this quest. And so we're putting out the pieces and parts and sort of what they would do or what they would encounter as they begin tracking this creature. Then we have our first encounter, the first time they engage with this monster, and then we're building out the second encounter, which is a little more complicated, introducing a town and the that's been affected by this creature and sort of the aftermath of that. And we've got a third encounter, a third encounter with this creature that is a culmination of some of the fear and effect that it has inflicted upon this town. And then, of course, we've got to end up at the monster's lair, and we've got to destroy it. So we're going to go ahead and continue fleshing these out tonight, and hopefully, you know, building some of these sections outright as we go. We still need to actually create the monster as we do this. We may use a basic stack block, and then reskin and modify for our own needs. Something like the Neogi was suggested last time as a possibility, and so we may do something like that. We'll see. But right now, let's focus more on the story than the actual stat block and mechanics here. All right, so let's start from the beginning here. Tracking the beast. We have characters would find unusual tracks, pointed scuttling prints, followed by a strange rag pattern caused by the tail, frothy egg clusters, carcasses from creatures the monster has killed. You guys came with the idea that in the process, the PCs meet another band of NPCs, perhaps monster hunters, travelers of some kind, other adventurers, who tell stories of people disappearing from an individual town, from specifically this town that we're going to get to in the second contact. So one thing we need then is we need to come up with kind of the progression of the tracking. We've got some cool clues, some things that are kind of littered in here, but you know we need an order that these hit. And I don't mean a railroady kind of process, but the characters are following a trail. Where does that trail go, right? So, um, where should they start? Let's see. Starting point. Um, well, Elias is based out of Darkport, um, but we are not using Darkport as this town that's been affected. We were coming up with a new town for this, so it needs to be a little bit, some distance away, upriver, I would presume, since this is a river monster. So perhaps they start at the mouth of the river, and that progresses from there. Let's see, mouth of river, question mark. That would make sense to me. Then we can move this band of NPCs. Let's see here. Encounter. We can move this band of NPCs next. So they're kind of falling up the river. They find this group that tells them of this creature. They then are told about this. Who tells them about not the creature because they wouldn't remember the creature. Tells them about the town and the strange things are going there. Then we would probably get to the town. Location. Arrival at TK Town. And then that would lead to tracks, I imagine. It's kind of where my brain would go along this. Yeah, so that's kind of the connect the dots sort of thing that I would think along those lines. Now, there's a lot that we could add into this, and it looks like we've already got some suggestions in the chat, so let's check those out. Brooke Mullins, hey Brooke, good to have you here. It says strange debris floating down the river, maybe. Also, happy I finally made one of these. Happy to have you here too. This is wonderful. Strange debris floating down the river. Yeah, I like that idea. The something that I think that we would definitely want to do at this part of the adventure is kind of build the atmosphere progressively, right? Because I could foresee Elias saying something to the effect of like, well, just follow the river up, up out of the valley towards the mountains or something like that. And so that's the starting point. They do, and at the beginning, the river is just a river. And as they follow it, it gets darker. They've run into strange things that have come down river. Then they meet these NPCs who tell them about this, this town, and it gets darker, and there's other spookier things that kind of go on. The atmosphere deepens. They come to this town. It's clearly off. They're clearly living under this horror that they don't understand. And then we find the clues and the tracks that lead out into the forest to this, or lead up the river into the forest that surrounds it, or what have you, to this initial creature. So let's add those in here for sure. Let's say, let's say clues. We'll say strange debris floating down river. And we'll say, let's see, what kind of stuff would float down here? Looks like we've got some ideas in the chat as well. Let's see. Ben Reynolds says perhaps they could find a smashed boat with gutted fishermen, his hands still clutching a harpoon stained with strange orange blood. The blood trail heads up river, maybe. Yeah, we could do something along those lines. Hmm. question would be, I like, okay, first let me back up and say that I really like that idea. The question would be is where to place it in our order here. Is it before or after the town? Um, to me, I think it would make sense for it to be after the town because big, that's a pretty ominous thing, right, for them to find. Um, and so it should be something that they encounter much closer to the creature, I think, because it's kind of a, especially with the blood trail that leads off there, this idea that they're getting close. So yeah, so let's toss that in. Let's put that down um, here. Um, let's see here. PCs find a smashed boat with slaughtered angler. His hand still clutching. Probably wouldn't be a harpoon up a stream here. That's more of an oceanic thing, but a spear, definitely. Still clutching a spear, um, stained with strange orange blood. I like the idea of the blood being orange. Um, I mean, I definitely feel like it needs to be a different color, since this is, effectively a homunculus kind of creature. Um, but uh, but orange isn't so off the path as to be really disturbing. He's hand still clutching a spear stained with strange orange blood. Um, yeah, strange orange blood tracks. The actually we'll say a blood trail leads up river. Tracks join the blood trail as the PCs grow closer to the creature. And then we would have soon frothy egg clusters dot the river. Like scum on the water. Cool. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we got a little bit of atmosphere going on there. Let's see what else in the chat here. Mr. Mex says little chunks of body parts or bloodied clothes. Um, yeah, we could have that in there. We could also have smashed boat parts, right? Because it's unlikely this is the only river boat this character, this monster's taken out. So we could say, oh, okay. So one of the things that just in real life that I find incredibly eerie, and we could toss into here potentially, is in real life when you just find a single shoe somewhere, just randomly out in the world, you come across a lone shoe that always makes me wonder what happened to whoever was wearing. Because when do you just abandon one shoe and not think about it, right? Like when do you lose one shoe and you just keep going and later on you're like, oh, I lost my shoe at some point. Yeah, so that always I think is just super creepy. So we could have things like that where we could have like a lone boot that drifts down the river. We can have some of the boat debris, maybe with a little bit of blood in there. We want to go from subtle and kind of that's curious, and scale up towards ominous as we go to really kind of build towards this climactic encounter. So let's see here. Odd bits of clothing like a lone boot. Chunks of broken boats stained with blood. humanoid or fish or both. Cool. All right, let's see here. Bum. Let's see here. Mr. X is even half-eaten fish. Yeah, half-eaten fish is a good place to start there too, I think. And half-eaten fish and some animal carcasses. Yeah, that would probably be upstream though of this floating. Probably closer to the town, but before. So we'll say clue. Half-eaten fish and animal carcasses. Makes sense. Jonathan Frost says Tang. You mean like Tang the fish? Because those would be reef fish. Or do you mean like Tang like the astronaut drink, the orange astronaut drink? Because maybe that's the maybe that's the creature's blood. It's not acid like we were. It's not acid like we explicitly said we want to avoid. It's Tang. It's just, why does this taste so orangey? Why are you drinking it? Like, um, all right. Brooks says board up windows of the houses, specifically the ones towards the river, to help hide light from the inside of the huts. Maybe hint at hiding from something in the river. Um, yeah, we could definitely see some boarded up windows in here. Um, One thing we want to make sure that uh, we bear in mind with the at the town uh, is that n- is that these townsfolk, they don't know that there's a creature. They just know that people are disappearing, and that there is, carnage in the aftermath. Um, so we have this idea that they would come up with their own explanations for it, because they don't have any memory of this creature. They don't have any physical clues left of it, and so no memory of it, and so they would assign their own sort of mythology to it. But that being said, uh, the town would be living under that fear. They would have boarded up windows, and they might suspect it's something from the river. Um, a demon or a divine judgment for the river or something along those lines. And maybe, because we're trying to figure out what exactly it is, maybe that's the key. Maybe it's not an inverse of the gray lady deity we came up before. Maybe it's a personification of the river, a river spirit or something like that. They're blaming for this. Um, that could be really interesting. Okay, so let's capture that. Let's capture that idea. Boarded up windows of the houses. Okay, town is clearly living under an oppressive horror. They don't understand. The windows overlooking the river are boarded up, and strange shrines have sprouted along the river's edge. A lone man preaches damnation in the town square. Cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that gives us kind of the flavor of the place when the characters arrive, and I like introducing the town early as opposed to waiting for the second contact with this creature to hit, because it'll make the town feel more organic as opposed to just another sort of plot point, a location for something to happen. And it gives the characters a reason to come back, and they're already aware of this place. Um, it also gives them the opportunity to kind of try to gather some clues and you know learn that the townspeople here just don't know anything. Um, that they're making up their own stories for this. Um, let's see here. Back in the chat. Okay. Maybe the tracks also show something was dragged away. Maybe another angler. Yeah. We could do drag marks. A blood trail. And drag marks lead up river. Cool. Don't need that. Yeah. Jonathan Frost says a single shoe without a foot in it. Yeah. And I don't know how many times you've encountered this, but I have encountered more times than I am comfortable with just a single shoe out in the world. No foot in it, no one around with a matching shoe, just there all by its lonesome, and not like on the side of the road where it could have fallen out of a car or something, just like in just very odd places. And it creeps me out every time. Um, let's see here. Ben Elder. Let's see here. Says, maybe a crazed hermit comes out um, and from a rundown cabin screaming, it won't take me, not like the rest, be gone, fires a crossbow at the party. Um, yeah, so we could do something like that. Um, it's well, okay. It's a really atmospheric thing, and I like that about it. The one thing to consider is placement of that kind of thing, right? Because if it's anywhere near the town, it may drive the characters away from going into this town. You know, they may get, they may get pushed off, or they may decide they're just going to slaughter this hermit, and and that may or may not affect their reception in town. Um, it's mm, but at the same time, you would have people like that. So instead of maybe firing a crossbow, maybe uh, it does the thing where it begs them, where this hermit, comes out and begs them not to go forward, begs them to run away. This place is cursed. Uh, you know, Effectively trying to quote unquote save them from whatever it is. Um, because then you have the reverse psychology element. The Moen NPCs like, oh, don't go there. The players are gonna be like, well, we're absolutely going there. Um, so um, you know, yeah, I mean that could be something we add to the town here. Um, say just before arrival, um, a lone hermit slash doomsdayer confronts the PCs, begging them to turn around and abandon this cursed land. Yeah, we can do something along those lines. Kind of really set the atmosphere here. Let's see. Okay, so Brooke, you licked the blood, Mr. Mex. Hello, I tasted. It's good. Ben Elder, stop licking it. Tastes like Tang. Come on. All right. Ben Elder, maybe for the hermit idea, they're so mad that they are able to remember some creature, but not exactly what. Um, hmm, maybe, maybe I. So something to keep in mind on this when you do things like that is that your players are going to try to assign some logic to your world. And so if you if we come up with this thing where nobody who doesn't have a piece of this creature can remember it, and then they run into somebody who doesn't, but can still kind of remember has a vague recollection of this creature, they're gonna like wonder why, how is that possible, right? Like it seems like either a gap in the magic or there's something there that they don't know, and so they're gonna do one of two things. They're either gonna go, well, that kind of, breaks the continuity of this magic and it kind of pulls them out of the story. Or they are going to assume that this hermit has some deep, dark part to play in this narrative. And they're going to spend so much time focused on this guy, trying to break into his house, trying to shake him down and get information from him. Um, so I would, at this point, not give him any information about this monster. I would leave the town atmosphere what it is, in that they're now undergoing this sort of religious fervor. Um, um, so uh, yeah, the so I personally wouldn't have him remember the monster. But we might get to one where we need a pointer character. In that case, we could sort of readdress that idea as we go. Um, let's see here. Jonathan Ross says, "LOL, RJ single shoe is truly disturbing." I agree. Absolutely. All right. Brooke Mullins, like waving some sort of holy symbol at them. Yeah, similar to what the preacher from the town would have. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Let's see here. Bum, confronts the PCs, waving a crude holy symbol. Make it crude because this is an ad hoc faith that they're kind of coming up with as they go, trying to explain these mysterious departures or abductions. Um, Jonathan Frost says, "Crazy old coot is a tried and true horror movie trope." I like it. You know what? Sometimes you got to work the tropes in there. Um, there's a comment in fiction writing, right? That some tropes are obligatory when you're writing particular kinds of stories, right? Because they define the genre. And not to say that Crazy Old Coot is an obligatory trope for a horror campaign, but it's okay to work some horror tropes into there because it reinforces that this is a horror campaign. It's a horror adventure. The classic example is you can't write a western without cowboys and horses, right? So, you know, we definitely need to have some of the typical horror tropes sprinkled into a horror campaign to make it feel like it is, like what it's supposed to be. Um, let's see here. Bellner says, "True. Maybe the hermit turns around and they see a fang sticking out of the back of its head." you know, honestly, if we end up needing a pointer character, 100% I'm doing that. I am 100% having this coot have no this hermit have no idea that it has a piece of this monster stuck in it. Um, and uh, yeah, if we need a pointer character, 100% we'll use that idea. Okay, cool. So we kind of got a fun progression here with tracking the beast through here. Lots of going on, lots of building the narrative here. We've got some opportunities to work in some dice rolls as we go through, and we're really laying down clues overall. We're building atmosphere. That being said, I probably wouldn't do a whole lot of dice rolls for the tracking the beast part. Maybe some obligatory survival checks with a very low DC. Um, the only problem with that is that when you add variability in, the characters can fail. And then you kind of have this like, well, where do they go from here, sort of thing, as they come off of your nice clean path. So there are places where we would say that, like, they can just follow the river and they run into this as they go. They come to this town and this occurs, and then now they kind of have the town as a starting point. And they can, then maybe we have some survival checks that work into there as they branch out from there and find the angler and then the trail of blood. And it's not so much that they fail to find those things; it's just that it takes more time as they're searching around, leading to either a confrontation with this creature during the day or a confrontation with it at night. And we know that it's nocturnal, so that would be a very different circumstances, and could really change the dynamic of the encounter. Um, okay, so but we're leading up to our first encounter, so we should probably get some details there. Um, we don't have all the stats for the monster yet, and that's fine. We're definitely going to know that it needs dark vision, at least, if it's nocturnal. Maybe something else like blind sight or what have you, um, but or both. But we can go from there. Um, okay, so before we move on, let's get a couple comments. We got a few more comments in the chat here. Let's see what you wonderful folks have to say. So let's see here. Maybe at the town, the party is examined for signs of the river spirit or something like. Does iron burn their skin, or can they cross salt? Um, maybe. Let me chew on that one for a minute, Ben. Let me chew on that one for a minute, um, because that kind of stuff would certainly be eerie. Um, but I like. I don't want. Again, I wouldn't want them, like, people coming out and trying to chase them with hot pokers to see if their skin burns with iron. Uh, you know, because again, that's gonna create a very different dynamic. That's gonna create a, like, we need to just leave this place dynamic, as opposed to a, like, there's something strange going on here dynamic. But things like, throwing salt at them to see if they wriggle up, like, like slugs when you throw salt at them or something like that. Could be, could be something that happens here. We could have something else like that. It might not be everybody. It might just be a few zealots and that kind of deal. Because we're going to have differing opinions about this throughout the town. There's going to be some people who are hardcore into this new faith, and other people that are that don't buy into it. Um, and so we definitely want to show some variation there and how that's done. It could happen in a couple different ways. So let's chew on that for a minute. Let's chew on that for a second. Um, Mr. Max says, could there be little handmade things scattered around the coot? Uses to try to keep the thing away. I can't think of the proper word. Fetishes, talismans. Um, let's see here. Ben Elish's talismans. Mr. Max says, like the Blair witch sticks things, or like out here when they don't want tourists going in an area, they stack rocks. Yeah, we could certainly have something along those lines out by the hermit's cottage. Um, so one thing. Okay, let me back up. Let's say yes, if we're going to build out the hermit's cottage, 100%, we should have stuff like that. Um, should absolutely have these little, talismans, fetishes, effigies, you know, Karens, whatever, um, whatever, whatever sort of things out there, that to give it a little bit of strange atmosphere. The question is, how likely are our characters to go track down this hermit and go to the hermit's cottage? Um, and the question might be very likely. If they are, then yeah, we need to have some details prepared about it. If they're not, then we don't. Um, and so we can weigh that based on how important this hermit becomes in the overall story here. So I would say that before we go digging deep into this NPC, let's um, uh, let's figure out how big of a role he plays before we give him too many details. Um, let's see here. Ben Elder says, I was thinking more, can they just hold plain iron and not a red hot one? I had similar for a Lycan quest, and they had to touch silver to be let into a settlement. Um, so, yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes way more sense. That makes way more sense when you're talking about here. You're talking about kind of like a Fey interaction with iron, um, you know, like lycanthropes would have with silver. Although, interestingly enough, in the new 2024 um, uh, the 24 monster manual, they've removed some of the silver allergies for lichens in there. Interesting. I find it interesting. Bet Owner says, yeah, Red Hot Poker's not really a welcome man. Brooke, let me brand you before you enter. Yeah, um, yeah, that makes way more sense, Ben. Now that I'm thinking about it, now that I know where your head was at on that. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with having some kind of test, and let's make a note here, and then we're gonna probably build this out a little bit uh, as we build out the town. So we'll say range of adherence to river spirit faith, and we'll come up with a different name for it. Range of adherence to river spirit faith. Zealots might demand proof of purity, non-corruption from the vengeful spirit. I'll say, i.e., thrown salt, touching iron, etc. We'll come up with stuff like that. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. So let's build some atmosphere for our first contact, and we don't. Cool thing about this is we don't really have to worry about balancing it too much at this point because we don't have a stat block for it. So, how do they find the monster, and under what circumstances? And we should probably do this in two places. We should say, is this 2? Okay, I'm gonna make this 3 then. Heading 3. Okay, so we're gonna say daylight. Okay. TBD and night TBD. Since those would be different those would be different situations since the creature is nocturnal, different circumstances under which they would find it. So let's see here. So nocturnal creature. So I think let's start with the night. What would they find the creature doing during the night? Probably thinking, feeding, hunting, something along those lines. So let's see here. Jonathan Frost is hunting a potential victim who is totally unaware. That could be interesting. Yeah. I really like that. Because 2, the victim wouldn't be unaware, right? Because I mean, the victim would. I'm sorry, the victim would be unaware because the they have no idea of this that this monster even exists. They think that this is some some religious thing that's taking people from the town. So it had no idea that it's being hunted by this creature. It had no reason to fear necessarily being in the woods any more than it would fear, or being along the river any more than it would fear doing that usually. And they can have this encounter where they fight they fight this monster and they defeat it. Um, and throughout the fight, the this NPC is terrified for their life, absolutely horrified that about the situation here. And then the fight's over. They're no longer looking at the creature. Now they have no recollection of the character saving them. They're just strangers they met in the wood, and it just completely changes um, that interaction, that social interaction on the spot. Um, let's see here. I like that idea. I like that idea. Let's see here. Brooke says, or even patrolling the borders of what it considers part of their territory or part of their area. Um, um, so, yeah, yeah. I could, I could see a little bit of both here. I could see a little bit of both here. To that end, I like the hunting thing. And then a question of who is it hunting. And it might be as simple as it's hunting a trapper who got held out too late, a fisherman who came in too late, maybe one of the town watch who is patrolling outside. Um, I kind of like I kind of like the idea of the town watch, um, because then it's somebody with a little bit of authority, which could effectively make the characters seem their accounts of this talking about this monster in town makes them so much uh seem so much more out there when there's this guard who is with them that's like, none of that happened. I have no idea what they're talking about. um so yeah, let's see. The the PCs encounter the not the character, the TK monster as it hunts new prey. A town guardsman trolling the walls, the town walls. I'll just say town guard. That's better. Town guard patrolling town walls. The guard is unaware that they're being stalked. During the counter, guard is terrified, but after they lose all memory of the event, which also, tangentially to this, brings up an interesting mechanic. Yeah, that would be they lose all memory. That we might think about during with this when we're building out this monster is that if we're saying that anybody who doesn't hold a piece of them, or the piece of this monster forgets it as soon as they stop seeing it. At this point in the adventure, not all the characters are likely to have a piece of this monster. Only one, maybe two at the most of them are likely to have a piece. And so there comes a point in the fights potentially in this battle where, like, if the character looks away, they forget what they're like, what's going on, what they're doing. Like they, can piece together their friends are in a fight and then look back and see the creature, but like, uh, you know, would that waste time? Would they lose an action or something along those lines? Mechanically, how would that work in a fight if, they go, look behind them to like look for cover, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, wait, what's going on again? Because they forget about this monster. How that would mechanically work. Something for us to think about when we work on the stat block. Um, let's see here. Um, they lose all memory of the event. Cool. All right. So let's see. You're back in the chat. Jonathan Frost says the thing would then learn these people can see it. Yes, it would probably learn that at least one of them can see it, and perhaps the others. Um, the um, which to that end, since it adapts, what if we say adaptive camo? Almost like chameleon-like skin. It starts to develop in one of the iterations from the clones, giving it advantage or bonus to stealth checks, something along those lines. Later on, as it has realized that it can be seen and it can be remembered now by certain individuals. Or at least now that its hive memory has figured that out. Okay, yeah, I like that. Let's see here. Ben Older says the gentle hum of this part of the river belies the tension in the air. The night sky hidden by the press of the fog. Suddenly, a crack of bones splits the air, and wet rip of flesh tearing follows. So, yeah, Ben, you're awesome with the descriptions here. I always love the ambiance that you put into this kind of stuff. You come up with some really fantastic word choices for this. I like that. I like that a lot. Brooke says, would the NPC even be able to see the monster while the party is fighting it? Perhaps, perhaps not. Again, a good reason why we need to come up with a mechanic for how that works. Because the likelihood I would see here, right? The almost comedic part of this encounter is the constant forgetfulness, right? Where like, the guard turns around, sees this monster, the PCs show up, they try fighting it, and the guard, scuttles backwards, trying to find cover, ducks behind a bush, loses sight of the monster, suddenly forgets that it's even there. On its next turn, hears the commotion, stands up to see what's going on, sees the monster again, runs for a tree, loses sight of it, comes back around on its next turn to see what all the hubbub is about. Sees the monster again, looks for more cover, and so it just ends up this NPC ends up ping ponging around this battlefield as they try to get away from this creature and then immediately forget that it exists and then fall back into the guard duty of like, oh, there's some commotion over here, I need to check that out. Like, I kind of I don't know, I kind of love the the slightly comedic element that would add to this, and just I don't know, I think it would make me giggle through the whole encounter, which sometimes is a lot of fun. Let's see here. Mr. Mex says if they save the person and they run back to town, whatever, whenever the party returns and sees the person that was being hunted, they have no clue what they're talking about. LOL. Exactly. Like so the party goes into town and they're like, "Oh, Joe, like it's good to see you. I'm glad you've recovered. All right." And they're like, "From what?" And they're like, "Well, the monster that we fought." And they're like, "There was no monster." And they're like, "Yeah, absolutely. You don't remember the big scary thing? We got this fang from it, that kind of." And effectively, now you have this NPC who's walking around going, these lunatics. these guys are insane. They're telling stories of some monster in town, horror stories, uh, spreading rumors and suspicion. Um, and uh, and so it adds to sort of another eerie interaction there. I think. Um, Benel just says, "Oh yeah, cries for help in the mist, classic horror movie start." Yeah, I mean it's again, why not? Why not lean on things that work? No reason to reinvent the wheel. Um, let's see here. Mr. Max is maybe a wisdom saving throw after a turn. The DC goes up as it gets stronger. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, Mr. Max. That I don't know that I make a wisdom save. I think I would probably make an intelligence save, because memory in the game is tied to the intelligence ability. When we think about things like history checks, nature checks, that kind of stuff, where you're trying to recall information that you know. So I'd probably put it on that, but I like the idea of there being a wisdom save, or being a saving throw of some kind in this, because it sort of puts a little bit of variability, and this is in that, ultimately, if you don't have a piece of this creature, you're going to forget it, right? But for the few seconds that you're in combat, the 6 seconds that it's out of sight, if you concentrate real hard, you try to hold it in your mind, maybe you can grapple onto it before this memory slips away. And so, maybe there is a little bit of that back and forth in there. And then the argument could be made, then, well, then we have to have the town guard make these checks and that kind of thing. You could just assume uh, that he fails them, and just keeps running like Benny Hill around this place. Um, so yeah, I like that check. Int save to remember the remember TK monster each round. Okay, yeah, I like that. I think that's a good piece there. It's a good balance. Nice one, Mr. Max. Like that. Mr. Max, you're as crazy as that other guy with the claw. Yeah. Brooke says the NPC promises a reward when the party gets to. Oh, I kind of want that. I kind of want, yeah, like, okay, right. So I can absolutely see the like they've slain the monster. They're all standing around looking at the corpse. You know, the guard can remember it now, as he watches it, and he goes, I'll, I'll tell everybody, what you've done. I'll ensure that the captain will reward you. Meet me in, whatever the town's name is, whatever, and then takes off, and then the characters go follow up, and he doesn't remember any of it. Uh, yeah, we're working that in. It will be so frustrating in the most delightful way to everybody involved. Okay. During the encounter, the guard is terrified, but after they lose all memory. While staring at the creature's corpse, the guard promises a reward to the PCs, but immediately forgets what they did as soon as he runs back to town. Love it. Love it. Okay. let's go ahead, and I think we're at our time, so we're gonna wrap up here. Um, last couple comments here. Let's see. Jonathan Ross is at Brook Total Rug Pull. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you don't want to pull the rug every time, but every once in a while, especially for something relatively little like this, it can be a lot of fun. And then let's see here. Mr. Rex is maybe if within 5 feet of someone with a piece of the monster, you get advantage on the roll. Yeah, you could do something like that. If you're trying to figure out an aura effect on that, I don't know that I would for this, for a couple reasons. One, we want to be able to play with that memory mechanic, right? Like we want this to be a hurdle to battling this creature, something that makes it a little more complicated. Um, and so we don't want to give there too many opportunities for characters who don't have a piece of this creature to retain memory of it. Um, so the uh, the other side of that is that sometimes auras, if you're not playing with maps, and while we will make maps and we would likely play with maps when we do this, but some people would run this through the mind. And when you're not, and you when you're not playing with maps, aura effects like that can be really difficult to track, because who's within 5 feet, right? Like you got to keep an eye on that all the time. And so I wouldn't necessarily do it for this personally, but that doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean you shouldn't necessarily. It would just be that would be my preference on this. Okay. Last comment. Let's see here. Mr. Mex says, or I'm sorry, Ben Eller says, Mr. Mex, I like that idea. If the hunter gets all up in the PC's face because they don't remember. Um, yeah, I mean, again, you could work with that. If you think it would add to the story, then I'd say go with it. And maybe we'll come back to it. Maybe we decide that that this aura effect is something to work into there. Maybe we decide we need it. Um, but we'll find out as we write this. It's an exploratory process. There's no bad ideas yet. So wonderful. Okay, so with that being said, we are just past our time here. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all of your amazing ideas in the chat. As always, you guys come up with some incredibly creative stuff, and I absolutely love hearing from you. So much fun stuff that you guys toss into here. So thank you for joining me. If you enjoy this kind of content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that stuff helps the channel grow, helps get more people in here, and helps keep these chats so dynamic and well, frankly, just fun. So, uh, with all that said, next Monday is going to be our next episode of this, and it is our 100th episode of Let's Write Adventure. So, big milestone. Very excited for that. I hope you all will join me, and we'll come up with some special stuff in that session. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you all on Monday. Talk to you soon.